Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for patiently waiting. You're connected to the earnings call of Security and Intelligence Services. The call will start shortly. Request all participants to stay connected. Ladies and gentlemen, you're connected to the earnings call of Security and Intelligence Services. Please stay connected. The call will start shortly. We would request all participants to stay connected. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, good day and welcome to Q2 FY22 earnings conference call of Security and Intelligence Services. As a reminder, all participant lines will be in the listen-only mode, and there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions after the presentation concludes. Should you need assistance during the conference call, please signal an operator by pressing star then 0 on your touchtone phone. Please note that this conference is being recorded. I now hand the conference over to Mr. Vamshidhar Guttukonda. Thank you, and over to you, sir.
Thank you, Margaret. Good afternoon, everyone. A heartfelt welcome to our Q2 FY22 earnings conference call. Along with me, I have our Group Managing Director, Mr. Rituraj Sinha, and Mr. Devesh Desai, our Group CFO. I hope everyone has had an opportunity to look at our results. The presentation and earnings notes were uploaded to the stock exchange and the website last evening. We are extremely happy to report one of the strongest ever quarters for growth in SIS, with the revenues touching a historic high of 2,431 crores and close to a 10,000 crore annualized run rate. After the second wave impact in Q1, the pullback in Q2 has been very impressive and much ahead of our expectations. The India security vertical has had the highest ever quarterly revenues, and especially on the technology side, we have had some sizable and blue chip clientele wins, which have given our Vision 2025 plans a great boost and also showcase the evolution of the industry. Our focus on segments like manufacturing, warehousing, pharmaceuticals is paying off with a lot of wins and new inquiries, especially from these segments. The facility management segment, after the steep decline in the last 1 year of 10-15%, especially because many of the end user segments like the IT/ITES segment and the hospitality segment were closed for a large part of the year. We've been very surprised by how fast the pullback has been. In Q2, we've reached a segmental revenue of 336 crore, which is very close to our highest ever quarterly revenue of 342 crores. We are just like 1 or 2% short, and that was in the Q4 of FY20. So this is pretty comforting, and we are very confident that with the with the order book that we have and the festive season coming up, I think the next half is going to be a pretty solid half for the facility management vertical. Australia, as we had communicated earlier and on expected lines, the ad hoc business related to COVID has slowly been easing off. But despite that, they had a decent quarter. It's only a marginal 3% decline, but we are still an 8% increase over the previous year. Furthermore, Australia has had extended lockdowns that are currently among the longest worldwide, which have hurt new tenders and also the cash collections. But hopefully, with Australia also easing off on its zero COVID strategies and vaccination picking up, I think the next 2 quarters the business is confident of new business picking up and also revival of growth. Cash logistics, as we've seen over the last 3-4 quarters, has had a fantastic run. It continues its stellar performance. It has generated over 11% EBITDA margin, which is the highest in our history. The cash logistics segment worldwide is the highest margin vertical among all our 3 or 4 verticals that we have. delivering anywhere close to 15 to 20% margins across the world. And currently we are at 11%, and we are confident that this number can go up over the next 1 or 2 years. Some of the new businesses that we entered into, like cash processing, cash deposit machines, have all been pioneering solutions that we brought to the market, and they're seeing some great traction when we go to the market. Most importantly, we managed to vaccinate fully 84% of our employees and got 3.71 lakh plus doses administered in a record time. And the balance few will be done by early December, and we'll be reaching 100% full vaccination. And this has given a great boost to our reopening and normalization of business. It also gives a great confidence to the clients. Many of whom are insisting that the employees be fully vaccinated before we take on any client, any new order. Margins have been flat over the previous quarter, despite some additional expenses on business revival, on travel, vaccination. We have reopened hiring. We've added to our sales teams. I think we are ideally poised to capture the growth which is going to unfold over the next coming 1 or 2 years. And as the business grows in the next few quarters, I think we are confident of reverting to our historic margin profile. With those remarks, I now open the floor for questions. Margaret, can you enable the question queue, please?
Thank you very much. We will now begin the question and answer session. Anyone who wishes to ask a question may press star and 1 on the touchtone telephone. If you wish to remove yourself from the question queue, you may press star and 2. Participants are requested to use handsets while asking a question. Anyone who would like to ask a question, please press star followed by 1. Ladies and gentlemen, we will wait for a moment while the question queue assembles. The first question is from the line of Rahul Chopra from HSBC. Please go ahead.
Hello, thank you so much. I have 3 questions, if I may. The first question is, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Rahul. I can hear you.
Hello. Perfect. Yeah, I have 3 questions, if I may. So first question is, could you give a sense of the impact of operational gearing if you strip off your contract mobilization cost and training fees which you have incurred in Q2? Just want to understand, basically, if you strip off those exceptions, would it still be at 5% margin, or you just want to get a sense of that? Second question is around the growth in employees. I mean, you said that, you alluded that, the margin was lower because increase in number of employees, training cost. But I can see you have grown 12% year-on-year on revenues. In securities, the employee growth is still 6%, still lagging, revenue growth. So just want to understand, it's not, your employees have grown by miles compared to revenue. So just want to understand the step up in training cost, what is so different this quarter. And the final question is in terms of Australia, maybe a sense of what's happening in terms of underlying labor markets, in terms of labor scarcity, which we are seeing globally, and underlying wage inflation, and how difficult it is to acquire new labor talent there in Australia. Thank you.
Yeah. So Rahul, I think your voice was a bit muffled. So let me try to understand if I've got the questions right before I have Rituraj and Devesh answer the questions. So your first question was on the India operational costs, right, which have been incurred on the new trainings and one-time expenses, right?
Yes, broadly.
Yeah. So Rituraj, Devesh, you want to take the question?
Yeah. So thanks, Rahul. Thanks for those questions. This is Rituraj. So let me begin by saying that, it's been a tremendous quarter for the Indian business in terms of revenue growth. The security business grew 7%, 7.5% versus previous quarter, and the FM business came in at almost greater than 10% versus last quarter. So it was phenomenal. The gross margin of these new contracts, this revenue growth has come in from new contracts as well as, service volume uptake in existing contracts. I can confirm that the gross margin line on new contracts is is in line with what we've been doing in the past. So we're not sort of doing any discounting as such as far as that is concerned. Employee growth has brought in some additional costs on training and other aspects because we've had some exceptional headcount growth. There's also been vaccination-related expenses and various other such one-offs that have happened in the quarter. So yes, they have resulted in the India security business reporting, a lower EBITDA margin this quarter. But look, I think I've stated this in the past, Rahul, that as long as growth is coming at same gross margin line, sooner than later, in a few quarters, the one-offs will taper out and we will be back to our pre-COVID 6% ballpark EBITDA margin line. Now coming to the international, the Australia piece you specifically asked about, Vamsi already captured that, Australia has seen an exceptional Q2 with, almost a 10-week or longer lockdown in Sydney and other major centers. But despite that, I think the important thing that I want to highlight in the Australia case is that even as the Australia growth this quarter looks very flat, I think the right way to look at it, right way to look at the international growth story is to compare with the pre-COVID year, 2019-20. You need to look at the pre-COVID year, and when you look at the pre-COVID year first half versus FY22 first half, you will see that our international business is almost 10% or bigger. The reason why it's looking flat is because FY21 international business did a lot of quarantine work, a lot of temporary contracts, because of which they registered a 20% year-on-year growth, which is rather exceptional and definitely not a continuing phenomena. It was the highest growth we have witnessed in international markets over 12 years when we've been in international markets. So 20% growth is not going to happen each year, Rahul. And FY22, if you compare that to FY20 for international markets, you will see that the business is trading well despite the lockdowns and the lower tender-related activity. But otherwise, I believe, in summary, that Q2 signals very strong growth across all the four verticals of SIS, and we are very hopeful that this will continue to roll into Q3 as well.
So he had one, thanks, Rahul had one.
Actually, my question in Australia was more about the employees.
The question was on labor.
Labor shortage, I think we have labor shortage in Australia, you're right, Rahul. Labor shortage is a pressure in Australia, but then I think post-lockdown it can ease out. It's not significant, it's like 2-3% short staffing at this point in time. So I think it can be made up rather quickly. You will also note that SIS across India and Australia invest very heavily in supply chain. We run training centers, 20 of them in India, training academies, and we also run regional training establishments in all states of Australia. We just started, during COVID period, we started, another training facility for specialized staff for mining sector. So, we have great confidence in our ability to recruit and supply, and that shouldn't be a deal breaker for international.
Understood, thanks. Just to follow up my first question, if I may again, just to pick up on that. Obviously you said the training fees and contract mobilization costs were probably the reason for margin drag. From my understanding, you still charge your employees, I think, 5,000 when they do on board. So I would assume that most of the training cost is probably covered. Correct me if I'm wrong. And on the contract mobilization, maybe you want to share some numbers again, just a sense of how that will taper off going forward.
Well, I won't have specific numbers on contract by contract mobilization costs, so I will have to ask Vamsi to come back to you on that. But let me confirm that training and recruitment is a profit center for SIS. It is not a cost center. So we recruit more in India, and we result in making a little bit of money on that. Because all our training establishments run with job guarantees. People who train with us, as long as they pass, they have a job guarantee. So, that gives us leverage to charge a fee and make it a profit center to a certain extent. But then again, I think the real point I would like to establish, Rahul, going a little bit beyond your question, is that there are three levers essentially in our business that determine our growth, revenue growth. First lever is existing contracts and additional work from that, which is very strong in Q2 and looks to be strong in Q3 as well. The second lever is new orders, which I think is very, very strong both in security and FM in India at this point in time. And the third and the mother of all levers is wage increase, which hasn't happened for the last 18 months in a meaningful way because the economy has not really been in a position to digest a significant wage change by Government of India or the state governments. Sooner than later, there will be a catch-up wage hike, and I think that will be a massive opportunity for us because unlike staffing sector, our pricing model is cost plus percentage service charge. It's not fixed fee. So not only do we pass through all of the wage hike that happens through minimum wage changes, we are also in a position to then benefit because we charge a service charge as a percentage on a higher cost base. So I think all of those three indicators are pointing in the right direction as of right now. And we are hopeful that, given that there is no disruption again for some or the other reason, we are hopeful that we will look at a double-digit growth this year.
Understood. Thank you so much. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone who would like to ask a question, you may press star followed by 1. The next question is from the line of Mukul Garg from Motilal Oswal. Please go ahead.
Hey, thanks. Rituraj, I just wanted to start by following up on the previous question on the cost side. I know, you said, these cost change on a quarter-to-quarter basis. But, just purely excluding the so-called reopening cost, where, you're deploying for new contract, which you highlighted as 20 crore increase in the monthly run rate or, kind of travel and everything. How should we look at the margins on the India securities business ex of the normalization this quarter, with the expectation that it should eventually, reach back to pre-COVID level, but just purely in the very near term, ex of the incremental investment from your side, what would have been the profitability?
No, so I think it's without getting into the exact details and mechanics of it. Look, the fact is that if you look at our facility management EBITDA margin change, you will see a very strong recovery there already versus Q1 as revenue picks up. In the SIS standalone, the SIS security business, that is not very evident because there's ESOP cost and then there is additional hiring cost and then there is travel costs and PPE costs. All of vaccination costs are booked in the standalone entity. So it's not easy for me to segregate and respond in very great specific detail. That's the reason why I keep saying that the gross margin of the India security business remains intact. Therefore, I have no reason to believe that the EBITDA margin profile will be any different than 6% that it was in the pre-COVID period. It's a good question whether this will taper out in one quarter or it will take more than 1 quarter, 2 quarters to taper out. But fundamentally, the margin profile of India security business remains unchanged. So you can model with 6%.
And Mukul, just to give you a one specific example, at our scale, every cost adds up. For instance, if just giving you a rough example, if you have 200,000 employees, and if you spend even 100 rupees per month on masks for the employees. That's 2 crores a month on cost. That's 24 crores a year. Right? Some of it might be passed on to the employees, to the vendors, but some we might have to bear. Right? So on our scale, every small item like this adds up.
So just vaccination, transportation, for example.
Yeah, vaccination, the logistics of vaccination, transporting the employees to, everything adds up massively.
Fair enough. The second question was on the overall India business. If I look at the securities as well as the facility management, both of them did very well this quarter. I think they are now at the peaks of what you have done so far over the last few years. How there was a line in the release that the pipeline continues to be very strong. How are you seeing the outlook of that, and was there some tailwind from seasonality this quarter, or do you expect that to continue to do well in Q3 and beyond as well?
Just to, before Ritra answers this question, the FM business, even in Q2, a couple of our biggest segments like the IT/ITES segment, the retail and hospitality segments were still operating, or railways were still operating with very lean, volumes. Right? Most IT companies are still working from home. So, in spite of being able to achieve this growth, so and Rituraj can answer from here.
No, I think Vamsi's made a very valid point. I think, look, like I said, there are 3 levers. The existing customer full volumes is coming back, which is very good. The new order flow is very good. I think, we've also shared with you the fact that security business booked more than 5 crores of revenue in a single month, new order-wise. So I think both of those parameters are going very well, both for security and for FM. And there is no seasonality for us. I mean, it's not as if, there is any bumper sale or anything like that in our business for Q3 as such in the festive season. But what then happens is that because there's more economic activity, generally the volumes see an uptick. More people going to malls need more security, more people going to movie theaters needs more staffing, and so on and so forth. So I guess while there is no seasonality, looking at the order book that we had in hand at the end of September, we feel quite confident about Q3.
Sure, and just a clarification on your comment, of getting a new business. Should we see that from a wallet share gain perspective, or are people kind of giving out more business to you guys?
No, I think to some extent this is market share consolidation, because what has happened in the COVID period is that several competitors of ours have not been able to cope with the business contingency planning aspect of managing a crisis of the scale that we experienced. So we have seen several customers opting to go with larger, financially more stable and operationally more capable entities like SIS. So business has moved from smaller entities to larger entities, including SIS. The other thing that we're seeing is that as labor reforms are on the anvil, a lot of customers have started to factor the fact that they cannot get away with cutting corners and working with vendors who are basically not fully compliant. Customers do understand that the big change in the labor reforms is that the onus of compliance to labor laws shifts to the user of the service, not just a contractor. And I think that will be is driving some of that change as well. So I think it's generally good trends here.
Fair enough. Thanks for taking my question, and best of luck for the rest of the year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mukul.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, you may press star and 1 to ask a question. The next question is from the line of Shyam Sundar Sriram from Sundaram Mutual Fund. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, Rituraj. Good afternoon. Thanks for taking the question. Very good revenue pickup on the India side and on the facility management business per se. So my question is twofold. One is, firstly, on the revenue side, in FMS, you did allude that, even in second quarter, the activity levels in the IT, railways, hospitals has not really come back. Nevertheless, we have still reached very close to the pre-COVID levels of revenue per se. So if you can just help us understand what are some newer areas where we are getting the contracts. So you did talk about market consolidating and we are regaining. That is very commendable. Are there any newer areas from which we are gaining new contracts? That is one point, and therefore can this business start growing, say 15 to 20% on a steady state basis for the next few quarters per se? That is one part of the question. Second question is that this facility business used to be a 7% kind of EBITDA margin. Are there any mix changes towards slightly lower margin businesses that has impacted the margins in the facility business per se? Because revenue-wise, we are very close to pre-COVID, but the margins are quite far away from what we used to do earlier. If you can also talk about that.
So it's a great question. I think, let me again start with the second one first. The facility management gross margin profile remains unchanged. So that's the reason why you see a massive catch-up in the EBITDA margin from Q1 to Q2 as the revenue picked up. Right, so the gross margins are intact. You will see 6.5% EBITDA margin in FM hopefully soon enough. But the second question that you asked is actually very interesting. What happened in the COVID period for FM is that the FM business got the massive hit. The biggest hit segment was FM, and that was primarily because they were greatly dependent on IT, very dependent on transportation sector, including railways and metros, airports, very dependent on, hospitality, including hotels and malls. And they took a brunt of the beating because of this reason, right? But what that also did is that it forced us to look at other avenues a little bit harder, than we did in the pre-COVID period. And that has brought us into manufacturing in a big way. Manufacturing is being the backbone of a large share of orders that we're getting this in Q2 period for the FM segment. And we are doing production support services, we are doing facility management, hygiene, other infection control measures, and good amount of uptake even of one SIS, the bundled solutions, where we are doing more than FM. We are doing pest control with FM, we are doing some other services with FM. So I think, in short summary, FM did get hit because of COVID, but I am a strong believer that on the long term, FM will be the biggest gainer out of this health crisis called pandemic, because the general awareness and willingness to spend on hygiene, on safety, on sanitation is at an all-time high. The per square foot expenditure that a business is willing to make on these services today is greater than what it was pre-COVID. So FM will continue to do well. It has tapped into new customer segments, and its original customer segments of IT and transportation and hospitality are bouncing back. So I think all put together, it's a good story there.
Thanks, Rituraj. That was helpful. So this manufacturing contracts, just trying to understand vis-a-vis the other IT contracts per se, are these structurally slightly lower margin? Because typically manufacturing businesses operate on very much lower margins than their own businesses. So therefore, when they try to outsource some of their non-core activities, is it fair to assume that these contracts will be at a slightly lower gross margin on a more structural basis?
No, actually production support is a higher margin business, my friend, because what you're like I've said this before, I think you really need to de-link staffing from our service, right? So we are not in the business of provision of headcount. When we say production support, we're actually delivering either a packaged material for a manufacturing site or a combination of services. That's what production support services are. It's not just providing 5 people who stand in queue and do something. So therefore, I think the gross margin profile is certainly not dragging it down. It will only add. Similarly for healthcare, I think, the services we started rendering from healthcare is going beyond standard cleaning now. They are talking about more and more infection control, higher frequency of cleaning. Facility management in IT and transportation has seen a complete transformation. People want their washrooms and meeting rooms and other common facilities cleaned at a much higher frequency. They want to use the best chemicals in business. They want to see proof of infection control through, swab testing and other things, which never happened before. So all these things, as we move from service towards solutioning, the gross margin profile is only going to improve.
And also just to add to what Rituraj said, I think we also mentioned it briefly in our note. I think we're also going to see vendor consolidation, being an important part of the next 2-3 years, where smaller vendors, non-compliant vendors are going to be viewed at more aggressively in terms of compliance regulations. Like take the case of Hyderabad Metro, right? There used to be 3 vendors across the Hyderabad Metro as of last year, even during COVID. But now we are the only vendor across every station, across all the Hyderabad Metro network, and we're seeing that play out in other segments and other clients also. And this, I think, is going to be a big theme as we go forward.
Sure. Thank you for that, sir. So one question on the security business. We used to talk of these technology-led remote monitoring per se. How is that scaling up? If you can, share your thoughts. Is it scaling up much faster than earlier? Any indication of how much is that kind of remote monitoring business size per se? If you can just give some flavor of that business, it will be.
So to be precise, we have 11,000 connections in hand. 4,500 odd are operational, rest are under execution. This is completely manpower-less security. There is no manpower involvement. It's alarm on OPEX model, 24/7 monitoring using video analytics and artificial intelligence, and response in emergency scenarios. It also has a value-added component where we are offering customers facility to, like small insurance companies, they want their signages fixed, they want somebody else to manage their air condition maintenance, they want somebody to go and clean their premises for an hour twice a day. So we're bundling all of that in. So it's a new solution. 11,000 sites, will get done hopefully. And that's a very good point that you make. At some point in time, we'll put it in our investor report or maybe ask you guys to come on a video call to show you how it works. I think this is the future of security. Not many people are actually tracking the fact that companies like ADT and Secom, which are global market leaders in this space, they have a massive premium valuation because of this nature of services that they offer. We are the first movers in this space in India, and we are looking aggressively to invest in this area as part of our Vision 2025 plans.
And Rituraj, currently on an annualized basis, will this be like sub 5% of or sub 2% of our total consolidated revenues?
I think sub 5% you can say.
Okay. Thank you, sir. That's it from me.
Should I take a size, one size, it will be sub 5%.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. A reminder to all the participants, you may press star and 1 to ask a question. The next question is from the line of Ajit Shah from India Infoline. Please go ahead.
Hi, this is Vidit from IIFL. My question was regarding the Australia margins. Now we've seen like decent improvement QOQ despite the ad hoc high margin contracts fading away. So could you explain what's driving this? Are new contracts coming in at higher margins, or has there been any sort of cost rationalization?
No, I think I would very clearly urge everybody to please factor Australia margins exactly at the pre-COVID level of 5% odd, a little bit higher than 5%. What you're seeing right now is because of still a lot of temporary contracts are not completely out of the system. There has been cost rationalization, or full costs are not in the business because there's no travel, there's a lot of things that are not happening currently. And this is not truly representative.
And also with the labor shortages, as we indicated earlier, there's also a slight premium to what we are charging. That's why there'll be a slight margin uptick you would have seen over the previous quarter. But yeah, as and when the border restrictions ease down and the labor shortages are out of the system, I don't think your ability to charge the premium will continue. So I think, as Rituraj was mentioning, the real margin profile will be between 5 and 5.5, which used to be the case before COVID.
Understood. Fine. And just another one around the OCF generation. Now that we've started seeing, high growth across India, and what do we expect, like a reasonable amount of OCF to EBITDA to be? Because if I actually back calculate, OCF for this quarter was kind of negative, right? Negative around 13 to 15 crores.
I will ask Devesh to answer that about the Australia OCF situation, but let me first give you an overview. Again, reinforcing something that I've said continuously over the past year. SIS has reported exceptional operating cash singularly because our growth was significantly slower. Our business requires working capital. We are not staffing. We cannot collect and then pay. We are dealing with essential services workers. We pay regardless, and therefore there is working capital involvement. The good side about working capital involvement is that you're also charging a much higher margin per head than any staffing company does. That's the reason why we are a 6% EBITDA margin business as against a 2% EBITDA margin globally that staffing companies do. And the all important aspect that we need to look at is return on capital. Whether, what COVID has proved for me, and this is a little bit of exchanging my personal note more than answering your question. I've been in this industry 20 years, and I have no doubt in my mind ever that, this business has potential to deliver a 20% plus ROCE. But honestly, I had never seen anything like COVID in my career, and I did not know what a slower growth or no growth situation will do to the ROCE line. What COVID has taught me is that this business has the potential to deliver a 20% plus ROCE with 20% growth and also with less than 5% growth because the working capital requirement adjusts. So I think that for me is a very powerful learning from this, and hopefully it will also give you some clarity. But coming to the question, I'll request Devesh to answer about the Australian OCF.
Thank you, Rituraj. Now, what's happened in the total OCF scenario, that India and the India Security and FM was on positive, but Australia was negative because of two reasons. Number one is, if you remember last quarter, we had advised that the DSO was a historic low in Australia. It was an unusual situation. It was not the normal situation. It was unusually low. So that is one effect of that is felt in this quarter. The second is that in our Southern Cross Protection business, we won several large new contracts. While they were getting deployed, of course, in the initial periods of such large contracts, the DSO does go up because you need to do the transition and you need to do the invoicing and get the whole process right before you start collecting it.
So these are two reasons why the international DSO went up. But on a year-to-date basis, our OCF is still above 40%. Consolidated OCF to EBITDA is still 40%, in spite of the growth coming back to India security and FM and the international business, and in spite of this DSO aberration. We're still on a consolidated year-to-date 40% plus on OCF.
Going forward, we may see Australia OCFs going further down as these contracts start getting executed. And
no, the OCF will only improve because this was
DSOs, I meant.
Yeah, the OCF will improve there.
All right, got it. The last question from me was regarding the FM business. Now, the business is largely back to pre-COVID levels, but can you, give an understanding of what the position of the IT, ITES, and the railways bit is? I mean, how much are they at currently compared to pre-COVID levels? So I'm just trying to figure how much growth or backlog is there.
They are clearly 25% lower than pre-COVID levels, even as of now. We track that very closely. But I think one has to see whether all of it will come back. We're not sure if 100% will come back or will become 105% or will remain 90% to pre-COVID. So it's not so straight to compute that there's 25% back to normal headroom. So please be mindful of that. But for the number you asked, we are at least 25% down both on railways and on IT from our pre-COVID normals. Just one last input I'll give you on this OCF question that you asked. Our guidance since the time we listed 18 quarters back has been 20% year-on-year revenue growth, 20% return on capital, and 50% OCF to EBITDA. These are the numbers we work with. This is what we stated from the beginning, right from our roadshows. And going forward as well, as things normalize post-COVID, this is what we want to be, shooting for. So please do not factor a higher OCF to EBITDA conversion. We want growth to come back. That's our primary focus. Our agenda is market share.
Got it. That's very helpful. All right, that's it from me. Thank you so much and good luck.
Thank you. Before we take the next question, we would like to remind our participants, you may press star and 1 to ask a question. The next question is on the line of Mehul Mehta from Arete Service Securities. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Thanks for the opportunity. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
My first question is, what would be monthly exit rate in terms of India security and FM business revenue? Is it evenly spread out or how is it?
So let me give you that number. The India security business is at the end of September is tracking at 328 crores. The Indian FM business is tracking at 119 crores. Just for reference, pre-COVID, India security business in March 2020 was 303, now is 328. FM was 116 in March 2020, now is 119.
Sure. Another question is, when you are guiding for 10,000 crores of annual run rate of revenue, would it mean that for the next half it would be 2,500 crores each kind of if I take broadly 5,000 crores or 5,200 crores in the remaining more or less broad guidance? How should I?
Let me just clarify. It's not, when I mean annualized, it's not for FY22. It's just 2,430 crores for Q2, just multiplied by 4 and we are close to 10,000. It's more
it's a run rate. We look at our business in a run rate perspective, my friend.
It's not a FY22 guidance.
So it's basically quarter two what you have achieved based on that run rate, you are annualizing it to 10,000 crores. Is that correct?
Not in quarter two. If you just take September monthly run rate. Just annualize it will be close there.
Sure. One clarification I needed. In FM business, we have railway vertical, which is quite a significant sort of. But when I look at an annual report, when you give revenue breakup kind of from each segment or each vertical, railways doesn't figure out anywhere. So can you guide where should I look for railways revenue?
Figure in government. Let me check. Mehul, I'll get back to you. It should be in government probably.
No, but it would not be reported as special segment, my friend, because like we've said, it's an important segment, but then out of 116 crore, railway would not even add up 10 crores. So, please understand, that's again something I need to keep reinforcing repeatedly. Our business is completely customer segment agnostic. There is no single customer that contributes more than 2.5% of revenue, and there is no customer segment, including the likes of banking and IT, etc., which are like more than 15% of our overall revenue. These services are needed by everybody. Everybody from your RWA to your kid's school, to your office, to your mall that you visit, to the public utility you use every day. Everything needs cameras, guards, and cleaning staff.
Yeah, but in terms of railways, could you broadly mention, say in FY21, what would have been the contribution from railway segment to our revenue from FM segment?
Before COVID, the railway segment used to contribute 9 to 10% of the FM segment.
No, of the FM
overall business. That has come down in FY21 because the railways business has come down. In FY21, it should be around 5% or so. Again, of the FM part. If you take the overall company, it's like minuscule.
So on normalized basis, FY20, if we take it was around 10% kind of.
Yeah, of the
FM business, not combined or something.
Of the FM business. Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, you may press star and 1 to ask a question. Anyone who would like to ask a question, you may press star followed by 1. A reminder to all the participants, you may press star followed by 1 to ask a question. The next question is from the line of Bhavik Dave from Nippon India Mutual Fund. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for the opportunity. Just one question. I don't know if you've answered this, but our focus was on cross-selling or deepening our relationship with existing clientele across business services that we provide. Just wanted to understand from a qualitative or a quantitative perspective, if we have 100 clients today, how many of them would have more than like couple of services that they use from us? So any color on that, and how does that shape up going ahead? So wanted to understand that bit. Thanks.
So I think that's a great question. The answer is that 90% of our customers are single using customers, which means that the horizon for One SIS as a platform is humongous, and that's why it's one of the key ideas for Vision 2025.
Right, but in a sense that how do we what would be the benchmark that we've set for ourselves, like in FY22 by the end, what that number should be every year? How are we tracking that? If at all, if we can give some direction, that will be very, very helpful for us to understand how incrementally, without adding any cost with existing clients, we're able to add more revenue, which will directly flow into margin. So that would be interesting.
We have a budget for One SIS. We have a 4-year financial model for One SIS, but we haven't really computed that in terms of what percentage of all customers will use, because SIS portfolio keeps changing. If we acquire an asset 2 years down the line, then that's a new set of customers, etc. So we haven't done it basis number of customers that will use multiple services. We've simply built out an aggressive revenue scale up and growth model for One SIS. So maybe, in one of the coming quarters, we will put out a page on One SIS and its roadmap, strategy, and things like that.
Understood. And lastly, sorry, I think you've spoken about this briefly on the remote monitoring services that we are the future on securities management. Sorry, I missed the comments, but where have we reached in that? Like, what part of our Securities India revenue would be from these remote monitoring services? And I understand that's a relatively higher EBITDA margin business, right?
So as of right now, we protect on our alarm monitoring business contributes not even 1% of the 328 crores that the India security business on a combined basis reported. So it's extremely, extremely small. But it is growing very rapidly. And it has potential to generate more than 20% EBITDA, which I think has the power to change the overall picture significantly. And that's why I said that we are looking to invest in that area very aggressively. We believe that it is a wonderful solution where security can be delivered with little to no manpower involvement, and therefore it's hugely more profitable.
Any specific industries which have already started using this, except maybe banking and financial services, where ATM or a bank branch would be using this, but any other industries that have started to take on these services, and which are the 2-3 industries that would be our area of focus for us to scale up? Because we have a lot of services where, like an oil and gas or a gas distribution companies, where we have very strong foothold. So will these services be are they warming up to this idea? Are you seeing that happening?
So as of right now, our focus is predominantly on banking, BFSI, and when I say banking, it's everything from banking to insurance company offices to gold loan branches and things like that. So, honestly speaking, our agenda is to try and get to 100,000 connections. And banking alone can deliver that. India has got 200,000 plus ATMs and a lakh over branches and gold loan branches and insurance, etc., all put together. I think there are 4 to 5 lakh touch points just in the BFSI segment. We have like 11,000 of that. So I don't think we need to open up 6 segments to get to our goalpost. But you're right, beyond banking, we have seen uptick a little bit in e-commerce, a little bit in e-commerce logistics a little bit, and then we've seen uptick a little bit also on the residential side, but too small. And to be honest, our focus is very clear. We want to basically pluck the lowest hanging fruit, rather than going all over the place.
That's helpful. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone who would like to ask a question, you may press star and 1. Ladies and gentlemen, you may press star and 1 to ask a question at this time. As there are no further questions from the participants, I now hand the conference over to Mr. Vamshidhar Guttikonda for closing comments. As there are no further questions from the participants, I now hand the conference over to the management for closing comments.
Thank you, everyone. That was a very interesting and engaging discussion with the analyst and investor community. India is poised at the cusp of a very huge capex revival, as has been pointed out by various economic research firms. We believe that the economy is poised at an inflection point that has been much awaited for the past few years. And SIS is best placed to capture the additional demand for security, facility management, and cash services that this will entail. The addressable market is going to increase. The pace of formalization is only going to accelerate with the rollout of labor reforms. And coupled with the steady change in customer behavior, towards more technology-based solutions. We are confident of maintaining our growth, increasing differentiation with the peers and competitors, and accordingly double our market share in all our segments as we have envisioned in the Vision 2025 plan. With this, I would like to conclude and would like to thank everyone for joining the call. I hope we've been able to answer most of your questions adequately. If anyone has any follow-on questions, feel free to reach out. Thank you and have a good day.
Happy Diwali, everyone.
Happy Diwali.
Thank you. On behalf of Security and Intelligence Services Limited, that concludes this conference. Thank you for joining us, and you may now disconnect your line.